continues coverage on Iran. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Tonight, unresolved questions. Will the Iranian regime crumble? What is China taking away from the attacks? And President Trump's latest message to Americans and Iranians. We'll dive deep with analysts and keep you informed of all the breaking developments. We start at the White House with our Washington correspondent Mari Otsu. She has the latest from President Trump on what's being called Operation Epic Fury. Mari, good evening.
Hey, Tiff, good evening. Yeah, here at the White House, beneath the American flag is flying the POW MIA flag with the motto beneath it, "You are not forgotten." That's as both U.S. Central Command and President Trump are announcing the tragic death of 3 service members and that 5 others are seriously wounded. And just this past hour, President Trump is releasing yet another address to the nation. That's as we're on day 2 here of Operation Epic Fury. And he says that there are likely to be more U.S. casualties, but that the U.S. will avenge the deaths of those Americans. The president also says that combat operations will continue until all of the U.S.'s objectives are achieved. And to the Iranian people, just as he said in his first address to the nation, he calls them to take back their country and their government. Take a look.
Last night, all over Iran, the voices of the Iranian people could be heard cheering and celebrating in the streets when his death was announced. The entire military command is gone as well, and many of them want to surrender into saving their lives. They want immunity. They're calling by the thousands. Combat operations continue at this time in full force, and they will continue until all of our objectives are achieved.
Yeah, he has.
President Trump also warning the Iranian regime in the middle of the night last night, saying, quote, "Iran just stated that they're going to hit very hard today, harder than they have ever hit before. They better not do that, however, because if they do, we will hit them with a force that has never been seen before." And President Trump is also announcing that the U.S. has sunk 9 Iranian naval ships and that they're going to go after the rest. Quote, "I have just been informed that we have destroyed and sunk 9 Iranian naval ships, some of them relatively large and important. We are going after the rest. They will soon be floating at the bottom of the sea." Also, in a different attack, we largely destroyed their naval headquarters. Other than that, their Navy is doing very well. Meanwhile, Tiff, world leaders are responding to the strikes. Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney saying that Canada supports the U.S. acting to prevent the Iranian regime from having a nuclear weapon and to prevent its regime from further threatening international peace and security. And meanwhile, the leaders of France, Germany, and the United Kingdom are releasing a joint statement emphasizing that they had long urged Iran to end its nuclear program. The 3 leaders also make clear that none of their countries participated in the strikes, but that they're remaining, quote, in close contact with the U.S., Israel, and other partners in the region. And here's Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese today. Take a look.
Australia stands with the brave people of Iran in their struggle against what is an oppressive regime. Ayatollah Khamenei was responsible for the regime's ballistic missile and nuclear program, support for armed proxies, and its brutal acts of violence and intimidation against its own people. We support the United States acting to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon and to prevent Iran from continuing to threaten international peace and security. We are concerned about regional escalation and urge the protection of civilians.
Meanwhile, Tiff, the Iranian people are taking to the streets worldwide to celebrate the strikes and the death of the Ayatollah. Hundreds are filling the street in New York City to celebrate, and there were celebrations here in D.C. just outside the White House and in Georgetown. And the celebrations also weren't limited to the United States. Families around the globe were cheering these sprawling strikes after weeks of protests in Iran that were met with violence and widespread executions. President Trump in his State of the Union address earlier this week saying that north of 32,000 anti-regime protesters had been killed. Back to you.
All right, Mari, thank you. And the U.S. also said that the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC, had killed more than 1,000 Americans over the past 47 years, adding that, quote, "America has the most powerful military on earth, and the IRGC no longer has a headquarters." To unpack all of this, we have an excellent panel of guests joining us now. Adam Hardage, he's a combat veteran and former CIA operations officer. Rick Fisher, he's a senior fellow on Asian military affairs at the International Assessment and Strategy Center. He's also an international military strategist. And Tammuz Itai, he's a geopolitical columnist in former Israeli Air Force. Thank you all so much for joining us as we continue to track all of this breaking news. Adam, starting with you, how long can this operation last? What should be the off-ramp for the United States here?
Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to be on. I would say, very simply, this would probably be, given President Trump's particular style of international diplomacy, or let's call it in this case, offensive direct action when diplomacy fails. Probably a very quick operation. I don't think his style is one that would commit U.S. boots on the ground in the Middle East. And I think what you're seeing here is America First policy in action, because in essence, by taking out one of the top two oil-producing regions for China, they have just put China on the defense, both with Venezuela and now with Iran.
And Rick, your thoughts on what this means for China, but also Iran has launched 165 ballistic missiles and over 500 smaller drones, plus at least 2 cruise missiles. How is the Iranian regime able to sustain its missile barrage? How potent are these weapons?
Well, Tiffany, the Iranians have produced thousands of missiles, estimates of 2,000 or more ballistic missiles, and probably many thousands more of the simpler and cheaper drones. But these missiles and drones are made deadly by the Iran regime's access to Chinese satellite surveillance and targeting programs. We know for a long time that Iran has basically been integrated into the People's Liberation Army space surveillance and targeting architecture. And if the United States and Israel are not able to find and destroy these missile caches, underground storage facilities and other places, then Iran's access to Chinese targeting systems will make its missile arsenal very deadly.
And Tammuz, from the Israeli perspective, has this operation been smooth so far? We just heard reports of an Iranian missile landing in Jerusalem.
So far, if we're comparing it to what happened in the 12-day war in the summer, at least for Israeli civilians and the home front, it's been much better, much easier. Very few missiles have penetrated over the summer, more penetrated with more damage. There's been one missile that landed in Tel Aviv yesterday, causing some serious damage, but not widespread, and another one today. So far, it's been sustainable for the Israeli home front and citizens.
And Adam, we are hearing that this operation relied heavily on CIA intelligence. It does look like it needed quite a lot of intelligence to launch something as successful as this, at least in the early hours. Talk to us about what you're watching here as this operation and the ensuing strikes follow-up ensue here.
Sure, and thanks for the question. You know, in typical President Trump fashion, what you saw executed was very precise, very well coordinated, clearly thought out ahead of time, and well executed in a disciplined manner. So what you'll see on the ground is obviously there's going to be an array of human intelligence sources. Most likely, I would imagine that the Israelis have probably a hand up in that, as they are specialists in that region, just given that it's their backyard. And Iran has been the sworn enemy of Israel and the United States for as long as we can remember. And remember that this has been going on for 47 years since the Iranian regime fell, or I should say, since the Shah was violently replaced by the religious fundamentalists. And so I would think you would have a combination of signals intelligence. You're going to have standoff drones. You're going to have satellite intelligence, technical surveillance. So that's, all kinds of beacons and signals and all kinds of other things that they're employing on the ground. And I mean, that's pretty standard for anything of what we would call setting the conditions before a combat operation would ensue, like what we've seen just now executed in Iran.
And Thomas, give us a sense of what it's like on the ground. I assume you're in a bomb shelter. How long have you been there?
Well, since yesterday morning, Israel time, Israelis have been going in and out of bomb shelters. Yesterday it was about every 40 minutes. Today there were fewer barrages, but so most Israelis have uh, been going in and out of their bomb shelters pretty regularly the past couple of days.
And Rick, I want to talk about the operation so far, because this was a joint one from the U.S. and Israel. How complicated is that to have two separate forces? What type of communication would you need so that you're not, for instance, firing on, your ally in this case?
Well, Tiffany, reports indicate that this operation has been under some degree of planning for quite a while. And of course, you have the American-Israeli coalition coming together in joint operations in Iran over the 12-day war in June of last year. And you have to expect that following that operation, some kind of action team has probably remained together and began the planning for what has culminated in the latest operation.
And Adam, expanding on that, we've seen previous reports of the Israelis buying American military equipment. How does that play into something like this, where perhaps we are using the same equipment, so there's that type of coordination and communication already in place?
Sure. Well, interestingly, the 1986, I think it was, raid into trying to get the American hostages out of, out of Tehran after the religious zealots had taken over, was so discoordinated that it resulted in the destruction of a C-130, the loss of life, and several helicopters, and that was a predecessor to the start of the U.S. Special Operations Command. And the whole reason for that was so that we would learn to train and work with, joint forces. And now in this case, this is a combined operation, meaning U.S. and Israeli. So I would imagine that given the lessons learned previously in Iran, especially out in the site that they would refer to as Desert One, which is where we lost those assets back in the 80s, I think that this probably had a high-level coordination between the U.S. and Israel before anything happened.
And Thomas, on that note, speak to us about the complexity of something like this. The U.S. and Israeli working together. How complicated is something like this to execute?
Well, first of all, it's important to say that for decades, the Israeli and the U.S. Air Force and Navy have had yearly big joint training exercises. So the basis for the cooperation and communication has been laid over decades. And from a certain level in both militaries, the officers know each other and have communication. So you don't start from zero with something like that. And obviously, like my fellow panelists have said, this has probably been in the works for a long time. And all the protocols needed and the confliction and all of those things have been worked out. Obviously, it's not easy, and I'm sure there hasn't been such a big joint operation between Israel and the U.S. until now. And it's been the biggest sortie of Israeli Air Force, the one that started this campaign yesterday, ever. So there's lots of firsts here, but they're built on a very solid basis of past cooperation at the operational levels and the planning levels.
And Adam, talk to us about, what was needed to get to this stage. We had the 12-day war. We had Operation Midnight Hammer that targeted Fordow and Natanz and the other nuclear-capable building sites. Of course, even further back in the first Trump administration, you had the Abraham Accords. How are all of those different pieces and moves leading up to this operation?
Sure. And, it's really interesting because President Trump, on the one hand, doesn't telegraph his moves ahead of time, but at the same time, he very much does. I mean, he'll tell you a month ahead of time. He's like, hey, you got to come to the table. You got to come to the table. You got to come to the table. You got to negotiate. You got to negotiate. And they didn't. And to me, in fact, it's funny that we're having this conversation because it wasn't 3 days ago that I was on another media site discussing the potential buildup in Iran, and I said, well, I think the conditions at this point are fairly well set for combat operations. I mean, if you just pay attention to to any of the movements, that they were very overt about it. It's not like this was some clandestine thing. President Trump was kind of shouting from the megaphone for the last month plus, saying, "Hey, come to the table. Let's talk. Let's talk. We don't want to do this." And I mean, that's the same kind of thing that we saw in Venezuela with Maduro. And so I think what we see with President Trump is a very, a very strong leader that is willing to take action where others would just say, stop. And in this case, we saw decisive action that was absolutely perfectly targeted to cut the head off the snake, so to speak. Whereas if I look at, and I'm a veteran of the global war on terror, over 20 years, from Iraq, Afghanistan, West Africa, Jordan, Syria. And what we saw in all of those wars was that we were just kind of there forever and didn't really have any desire to win. And we couldn't even really define what winning was. And I think in this case, what you are seeing is a very deliberate, very targeted attempt to insert regime change, but that is driven by the Iranian people themselves, not by U.S. Outcomes. What we would like, I think, and I'm not speaking for the administration, obviously, what we would like to see, I think, is a solid American partner. We would love to see Iran get back to what it was. I mean, you're talking about, Iran and Beirut as the Paris of the Middle East back in the 60s and 70s. And I think the Iranian people have been very passionately wanting to get back to that. And it's just a lot of the same thing that we see between the Taiwanese and the Chinese. It's like, the Taiwanese would like to have their own, sovereign, free entity, and the Chinese don't want it. So I think President Trump has just been very, very direct and decisive when it comes to making sure that America first policy, and therefore also their country first policy, gets exported around the world. And I think that's what we're seeing here.
And expanding on that, Rick, what is the president's objective here? We did see him, send that message directly to the Iranian people early yesterday morning, calling this a generational opportunity, saying today that the objective has been achieved. What is that objective?
Well, clearly, as the president has stated, his objective is to enable the people of Iran to choose a new, different government to replace the terroristic, theocratic mullah regime with something much better. How they get there, though, is the great question. And one would hope that our Israeli allies and our covert operators in Iran have also been working this problem, how to equip before even encouraging popular uprising in Iran to the degree that the remaining Revolutionary Guard power centers at least can be surrounded or prompted to come out into the open so that American and Israeli air power can deal with them. But one hopes that the United States and Israel have been working on this problem for a long time. It's not just a matter of bombing Iran into submission. It's also a matter of encouraging and equipping the people of Iran to be able to step up, step out, and insist that they have a new government.
And Tammuz, on that note, Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu also giving a message yesterday to the people of Iran. What does a successful regime change look like in Iran? What would be next here?
I think that's a very good question. And like was said just a moment ago, there has been a mixed record for regime change by the United States. And I think President Trump and his administration have learned those lessons carefully. Obviously, if we just look at the case of Syria, right, the unlikely current president of Syria, who was designated a terrorist until a while ago, but he managed to take advantage of the vacuum created by Israel decimating Hezbollah and Russia being busy in Ukraine and then taking over the crumbling Assad regime. And when he managed to consolidate power and shown willingness to cooperate with the United States, Trump embraced him. Maybe he may not be an ideal figure, and we have to see what happens in Syria. But I think the Trump administration and Israel hope that whoever takes charge, whether it's IRGC people who turn against their regime or civilian leaders or some sort of combination, they will manage to take charge of enough of the territory and enough of the power, and also be willing to work with the United States and Israel and the Gulf states and not against them. And then the other stuff can be sorted out later. Any other outcome, whether it's disintegration or prolonged campaign, is definitely not something the United States or Israel or anybody else but the CCP want.
And Adam, on that note, one name that's often floating around is Reza Pahlavi, the Shah's son, often called the Crown Prince of Iran. He has a lot of support symbolically, for sure. We saw people in Iran shouting his name in the protests when the regime was cracking down very violently just a month or two ago here. Does he have the support needed, though? What about all the other factions inside Iran? What is your assessment on how this could go?
It's very interesting when you start talking about line or chain of succession or line of succession, that kind of thing, because it's every time I go to Washington, D.C., I get the same sort of sensation where you go in expecting one thing and you come out seeing an entirely different thing. And I think that there's going to be a lot of that here, because where we are is you've got a guy that hasn't been in the action, hasn't been in the fight. You're going to have some resentment with people that were on the ground who've lost loved ones, who everything else. But the same story, he's got political support and background. So I honestly, I'm half a dozen and one in the other. 6 and 1 and pick 'em kind of thing. To me, I don't know how that's going to play out. I do know the power abhors a vacuum, and when you cut the head off a snake, which is what has basically happened in this instance, the outcome can be very messy, can be very unpredictable, and I'm sure there are many, many factions vying for power as we speak.
And very quickly, as a follow-up, we did see the CIA recently putting out a video in Farsi talking to the people in Iran. How successful do you think something like that was, especially leading into this operation?
Yeah, in this day and age, it's funny, because if you would have asked me this 10 years ago, I would have said, well, probably gets, 10% people take it seriously, and maybe 1% actually, say something about it. But now I would just say that we live in this day and age where, with AI and, and endless filters on things, and the way that things have really, truth is really, really, really hard to discern these days, because everything that we see is either a manufactured story, it's a lie, it's a fake, it's a deep fake, it's a whatever, it's a who's it, what's it, whatever. I don't have a clue as far as what the effectiveness of that kind of operation might be. I do think that when people are very desperate for help, they will turn to almost anything, even if it means that they might even be getting suckered into something that is, let's say it was a nefarious thing, which was not agency backed. But even if it was a real thing, when people have their own backs against the wall, they will do very, I would say, even like desperate things to make sure that they and their families and their loved ones, make it through and survive. And so I hope that they've gotten some positive response. I'm sure that's just one of 1,000 other, operations that they have going on, trying to influence, persuade, inform, deny where it is necessary. So I think when we see those things, there's probably a lot more going on behind the scenes than even we're hearing about today.
And Rick, of course, with the fog of war, there is a lot of misinformation and disinformation coming out. It seems right now what we do know so far, President Trump coming out saying that the U.S. has sunk 9 Iranian ships, and that the Central Command has said that Air Force B-2 bombers were also conducting strikes. We saw that with Operation Midnight Hammer. They're not saying exactly what they were striking here, just hardened ballistic missile facilities. Any sense of what that could be? Perhaps Pickaxe Mountain? There was a lot of focus on that after the Operation Midnight Hammer, that could be the next area. What are you watching for in terms of the firepower that all of these different sites have here?
Well, Tiffany, yes, that's a very important question, and our understanding really depends upon what the U.S. government, what the Israeli government will tell us. But back to your previous point about disinformation, it was very interesting today to find an article by a Chinese academic on the sort of third level state media outlet called Guancha, in which this academic, two of them would involve some kind of emergence of the current regime. Either a direct descendant of Khamenei or some new kind of hardline leadership faction. This academic was giving much less of a chance of a non-regime faction moving in and basically creating a new government. So the Chinese are trying to manipulate our impressions, and by doing so, hopefully manipulate the future.
Thomas, there's a lot here to unpack. I want to stick on the propaganda, disinformation angle, specifically China, because we do know Communist China has been doing all sorts of that throughout the ages, especially with their bot farms online. We saw a lot of that recently, especially. How are you reading that? And perhaps on the flip side, how is China reading this operation so far?
Well, let's start with Sun Tzu, who said many years ago that all war is based on deception, and that includes the good guys. So whether you get reports from Israel, the US, Iran, or China, when it comes to operations like this, you know they pick what they want to say, and sometimes it may not be true, because whenever you tell somebody something, you also, if you tell your own citizens something, you tell something to the enemy as well. I think basically over the summer, Iran and other China allies saw that it's not a reliable ally because it didn't help them materially. And it doesn't seem to be helping them now. So I think it's probably in a sense trying to mitigate the damage. And part of it is to save face, and part of it is to try to steer the outcome into what you just said. Because as we know, about 90% of Iranian oil goes to China, but it's more than that because they get it, because Iran is sanctioned, they get it for cents on the dollar. And if there will be a new regime and it will be market price, it will change the picture of oil prices for China, because China itself gets about 10% of its oil from Iran. And we had Venezuela, and we don't know what's coming next. So I think it's more or less damage control right now. I'm sure they hope Iran, one way or another, stays a center of destruction and distraction in the Middle East, so that they can keep on doing what they want in mainland China and regarding Taiwan. It seems like this Trump administration is working hard to dismantle the CCP's network of proxies, whether it's Venezuela, Cuba, Iran, and others, so that at the end of the day, they're alone. And if that's indeed the strategy, then it seems like a wise choice for the US to bear this much force so that they can conclude their part in this campaign quickly and refocus on China.
Adam, on that note, on the information part, I want to continue on that very quickly because, of course, we are operating in the fog of war here. We've seen activity on X spike a lot. Of course, there's a lot of information on there. Give us a sense from the intelligence perspective, how much do you think we actually know about what's going on? About 10%? Everyone likes to think they're experts in reading what is happening here, but give us a sense, how much do we actually know as something like this plays out?
Yeah, it's interesting because Ashla said, that truth is the first casualty in war, and that's completely right. War is as much a kinetic game as it is a misinformation, disinformation, and shaping of perception game. So I think what we're seeing here right now is frankly the opening salvos of what could be, like if I'm looking on the positive side, it could be a great renewing for Iran and the Iranian people, and women's liberation, free capital markets, bringing them back into the modern fray of commerce and society. That would be wonderful. Love that outcome. On the other hand, again, as I said before, power doesn't pour a vacuum. And I thought it was very interesting when President Trump said, to the Iranian people in his address, he said, this is your only chance that you're probably ever going to get to take a country back. And so I'm telling you to take it back now. I've never heard any world leader speak like that, say anything like that, because he's basically saying, hey, we're going to take out the trash for you. But once that trash is taken out, it's time to clean up your own neighborhood and time to clean up your own, so that you can build the future that you want for yourself, because we're not going to do it for you. Honestly, I think we probably know more than we usually do at this point, which I would say probably, a good 30-40% of information is maybe accurate. But what is really interesting is if you look at the way and kind of some of your other guests were talking about how Trump has structured his interventions, let's call them, to be very tactically focused and very objectively driven, so that we get in, we get out. It's not a forever war. We're not putting boots on the ground for a long time. We're not, doing nation building and exporting democracy. We're not trying to put, our version of humanity on somebody else. I think what you've seen is a masterstroke of real politic in action, and I don't know where this is going to lead, but man, it's been 47 years in the making, and I, for one, am happy that the Iranian people have a chance to secure their own future. I hope they do.
It definitely seems like a historic moment that we're witnessing here. Adam Hardage, Rick Fisher, and Tammuz Itai, thank you all so much for joining us.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
And on screen, there is a live look into Tel Aviv, where we're going to that's actually Jerusalem, where we did see earlier one of Iranian missile strikes landing, getting past the Iron Dome. So we'll keep you updated as more information comes out. Stay tuned, as we'll be continuing our coverage in just a short minute. No, all good.
What has lasted 5,000 years was once almost lost. Now, the world awaits the divine culture's return.
See it at least once in your lifetime. Shen Yun returns to David Koch Theater, March 25th through April 12th. Get your tickets now at shenyun.com.
The bladder control aisle. You won't shop here again. Your private business is your own. The constant struggle is over. Now there's a better way. It's HDIS. We home deliver bladder control products. We understand how you feel. For over 25 years, we've home delivered to many of the 20 million Americans who deal with incontinence. We offer all brands. We pay shipping and use plain, unmarked boxes. If we can help you or someone you care for, call for your free product sample pack and $45 in money-saving coupons. Our counselors will help you choose the right product. And unlike stores, we're always in stock. You'll get what you need. Satisfaction guaranteed. HDIS, the better way.
For your free sample pack with your free catalog, $45 in money-saving coupons, and free product samples, call 1-800-701-6159. That's 1-800-701-6159.
Discover the ancient secret to vitality and longevity with Puretane black ginseng. Crafted from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng, each root is carefully nurtured for over 2,260 days, undergoing a traditional 9-round handcrafted process of steaming and drying to unlock full potency and absorption. Experience pure, natural energy with Puretang Black Ginseng. Order now at puretang.com.
$99.98. Technology for you. Like our MyPillow mattress topper, our queen size has over 10,000 individual comfort supports to help relieve your pressure points. And how about our 3-inch Hybrid Plus mattress topper? It's infused with copper and silver to help your body get the restorative sleep it needs. And our MyPillow and Case Coil mattresses, I personally helped develop these mattresses to make sure they have everything needed to give us great sleep. Plus, they're made right here in the USA, and they ship right to your front door, absolutely free. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to get MyPillow mattresses and toppers for as low as $99.98 and free shipping.
And welcome back. The U.S. and Israeli forces continue coordinated strikes across Iran, targeting military command infrastructure as world leaders voice support, and Tehran launches counterstrikes across the region. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has more from the White House.
One of the largest, most complex, most overwhelming military offensives the world has ever seen.
In Operation Epic Fury, the U.S. and Israel are continuing to strike Iran, and it's expected to last for at least the next several days, if not weeks, as they're working to take out what's left of the Iranian regime. U.S. officials have confirmed at least 3 U.S. military service members killed and 5 injured.
But America will avenge their deaths and deliver the most punishing blow to the terrorists who have waged war against basically civilization.
Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and several other top officials killed in the strikes thus far.
This wretched and vile man had the blood of hundreds and even thousands of Americans on his hands and was responsible for the slaughter of countless thousands of innocent people all across many countries.
President Trump saying that at least 48 Iranian officials have been killed. Several world leaders have come out in support of the operation, calling on the regime to lay down their arms and give up.
Iran can end this now. They should refrain from further strikes, give up their weapons programs, and cease the appalling violence and repression against the Iranian people.
We support the United States acting to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon and to prevent Iran from continuing to threaten international peace and security.
Other nations have also suffered from terror. So it is fair to give the Iranian people a chance to get rid of the terrorist regime. It is important that the United States is determined. And whenever there is American determination, global criminals weaken.
U.S. Central Command releasing video showing U.S. military assets deployed throughout this operation thus far, but also what they've been striking. Iranian radar stations and drone sites that have been annihilated. The U.S. is also targeting the command and control infrastructure throughout Iran, not just in Tehran, so striking Iranian military targets, not civilian infrastructure. But Iran, on the other hand, targeting civilians, attacking more than a dozen locations with ballistic missiles, including airports, hotels, and residences in Israel, Dubai, and Bahrain, among other neighbors, killing and injuring several people. President Trump speaking to these leaders over the phone. Meanwhile, their country's officials condemning Iran.
We hold that the government of Iran is fully responsible for these attacks.
U.S. embassies and consulates throughout the Middle East are telling employees and American citizens to shelter in place. In Washington, reactions from Congress have fallen along party lines mostly. Republicans praising and most Democrats condemning the operation. That's even though many Democrats are in support of a regime change in Iran and celebrate the death of the Ayatollah.
And there was intelligence to prove that they were intentionally undermining the negotiations that were taking place.
Iran massacred 30,000 of their own people right now. This war is not about the Iranian people. It's about this poisonous regime. And that's why I'm proud to stand with our military. I'm proud to stand with Israel, too. I might be a Democrat, but in this specific case, the president is absolutely correct to do these kinds of actions. How many treaties, how much negotiation? I never thought they would work. Iran has only ever responded to these kinds of things.
I'm not against regime change in Iran. I just want to hear the case that we should risk a lot of American lives to achieve that. The Congress decides whether we go to war or not the president.
I think the president made the right choice. And he gave them obviously plenty of notice that there was a timeline, whether he should have come to Congress. There's been a lot of conversations, and I'm sure we'll have those conversations again soon.
Congressman Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna are forcing a war powers resolution vote to the floor later this week, and that, if passed, would limit President Trump's authority to conduct these strikes. And demonstrations in favor of U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran have been taking place along several countries in the world, including inside Iran and here in the U.S., from Washington to New York to Los Angeles.
People that are on the outside need to understand that we've been the first victims of the Iranian regime's brutality for almost 50 years.
As for President Trump, he's expected to give updates throughout the week on the situation. Reporting from the White House, Jack Bradley, NTD News.
And President Trump today just released a new statement on Iran. Let's take a look.
Over the past 36 hours, the United States and its partners have launched Operation Epic Fury, one of the largest, most complex, most overwhelming military offensives the world has ever seen. Nobody's seen anything like it. We have hit hundreds of targets in Iran, including Revolutionary Guard facilities, Iranian air defense systems. Just now it was announced that we knocked out 9 ships plus their naval building, all in a matter of literally minutes. Iran's formerly supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is dead. This wretched and vile man had the blood of hundreds and even thousands of Americans on his hands and was responsible for the slaughter of countless thousands of innocent people all across many countries. Last night, all over Iran, the voices of the Iranian people could be heard cheering and celebrating in the streets when his death was announced. The entire military command is gone as well, and many of them want to surrender into saving their lives. They want immunity. They're calling by the thousands. Combat operations continue at this time in full force, and they will continue until all of our objectives are achieved. We have very strong objectives. They could have done something 2 weeks ago, but they just couldn't get there. Earlier today, CENTCOM shared the news that 3 U.S. military service members have been killed in action. As one nation, we grieve for the true American patriots who have made the ultimate sacrifice for our nation, even as we continue the righteous mission for which they gave their lives. We pray for the full recovery of the wounded and send our immense love and eternal gratitude to the families of the fallen. And sadly, there will likely be more. Before it ends, that's the way it is. Likely be more, but we'll do everything possible where that won't be the case. But America will avenge their deaths and deliver the most punishing blow to the terrorists who have waged war against basically civilization. They have waged war against civilization itself. Our resolve, and likewise that of Israel, has never been stronger. America is now, again, the richest, most powerful nation in the world by far. But the only reason we enjoy the quality of life that we do and the freedom and security is we have done things that others are unable to do. But it's because of warriors who are willing to lay down their lives to do battle with our enemies, and they do battle better than anybody. An Iranian regime armed with long-range missiles and nuclear weapons would be a dire threat to every American. We cannot allow a nation that raises terrorist armies to possess such weapons, would allow them to extort the world to their evil will. Not going to let it happen. We're not happening to us, and we're not going to let it happen to others. The United States has the strongest military the world has ever seen. I rebuilt our military in my first term. There's never been a military like we possess. And frankly, there's nobody even close, but we are now using that military for good. We want to have it for good purpose. We're undertaking this massive operation not merely to ensure security for our own time and place, but for our children and their children, just as our ancestors have done for us many, many years ago. This is the duty and the burden of a free people. These actions are right, and they are necessary to ensure that Americans will never have to face a radical, bloodthirsty terrorist regime armed with nuclear weapons and lots of threats. For almost 50 years, these wicked extremists have been attacking the United States while chanting the slogan, "Death to America," or "Death to Israel," or both. They are the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. We are the world's greatest and most powerful nation, so we can do something about what they do. These intolerable threats will not continue any longer. I once again urge the Revolutionary Guard, the Iranian military, and police to lay down your arms and receive full immunity or face certain death. It will be certain death. Won't be pretty. I call upon all Iranian patriots who yearn for freedom to seize this moment, to be brave, be bold, be heroic, and take back your country. America is with you. I made a promise to you, and I fulfilled that promise. The rest will be up to you, but we'll be there to help. Thank you. God bless you to our incredible warriors, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
And joining us now to dive into this very volatile situation in Iran, we have our panelists, Shahrzad Ghani, publisher of the Epoch Times Persian edition, and Andrew Harding, Senior Associate for National Security Coalitions at the Heritage Foundation. Thank you both so much for joining us tonight. Now, we just heard from the president there tonight saying the military operations continue in full force at this time, and they will continue until, quote, all of our objectives are achieved. Andrew, on that note, what are these objectives specifically? Do they include regime change? What does it take to accomplish them?
Well, thanks for having me. I think the president laid out pretty clearly 3 general objectives. First is preventing Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon. He made very clear that this is unacceptable, that the Iranians were unwilling to put this into writing and to come to an agreement with the United States on achieving that objective. Secondly, the president made clear that Iran cannot obtain a ballistic missile program that can hit the United States. We know that Iran has a large missile program that can hit different partners and military bases of the United States in the Middle East, but we know that Iran was seeking to get the capability to hit the continental United States. Again, something that is unacceptable to American security interests. And finally, the president's third objective here, as he's been articulating, is giving the Iranian people the option to pursue their own destiny, ensuring that this regime that has killed tens of thousands of its own people in just this year alone is unable to continue this oppression. The president made clear that the Iranian people will have control of that destiny. The United States is offering support, but ultimately it'll be up to the people to acclaim their own freedom and destiny.
And Shahrzad, as Andrew mentioned there, President Trump has urged the Iranian people to take over their government, saying, quote, this will be probably your only chance for generations. What does a successful regime change look like in Iran?
The Iranian people are seeking to have a secular democratic government in the future. They So they are seeking regime change, and this is one only opportunity that President Trump has provided to Iranian people, that they waited for 47 years to reach to this moment, the moment that it's unbelievable for them that the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic is no longer alive. And what is concerning them, though, is that the news about Iran, the U.S. administration doing negotiations with the remaining officials of the Islamic Republic. This is the only concerns that they have. And as Andrew also said, they want to have the destiny in their own hands. And how can that happen? Right now, the majority of Iranian people, I would say around 90%, have accepted the leadership of the exiled crown prince, Reza Pahlavi, because he's saying that there is going to be a future, and he has come up with the Iran prosperity plan, and there is a emergency booklet that he has introduced, and he has a team right now that is showing that they are able to transition and use the leadership of Prince Reza Pahlavi to be able to do the transition to a secular democratic government. But before that, people are looking forward to the regime change. After that, they want to go to be able to do to go to the ballot box to select what kind of government they want, because there are a lot of people, Iranian people, who are asking for constitutional monarchy, and there are a lot of others who are asking for Republican. And it doesn't matter that Prince Reza Pahlavi, he's the son of the late Shah, because he's saying that I'm not asking for any position, I'm not asking for power for myself, I'm just working as a mediator, as a broker to lead this transition. And that's what they are asking for. And the future of the Iran, what people are seeking is a secular democratic Iran, that everyone can have the right to practice and to believe in what they want, but what they believe in. But right now, this is something that they cannot have.
And Andrew, with the supreme leader now dead, along with more than 40 senior Iranian commanders, how does the structure of Iran's interim leadership operate? Will there be a succession plan? What could that look like?
Well, your guess may be as good as mine, because we don't even know who's still alive at this moment. So the first step is figuring out who is still there and calling some of the shots. We do know that there have been many scenarios planned by the Iranian regime to get to this point and to ensure that they have an operating council. We do know that that is occurring right now. But we also know that no matter how well you may plan for these types of scenarios, if you're punched in the face, your plans always change. And I think the Iranians are in a very stressful situation. They're losing leverage. They continue to strike Gulf partners. And in fact, just a few minutes ago, there's been reports that the Iranians hit a UK Air Force base in Cyprus. So they are really going out and hitting practically any target that they can, and are not providing themselves with a lot of leverage, regardless of who is in power. So perhaps, as the president made clear, the United States knows who they can be talking to. They know who's emerging these leadership vacuums, and there may be opportunities to work with this group. But as it stands, these operations are successful. Iran is losing leverage, and the president is able to ride this message and demonstration of strength that is helping keep America safe.
And Shahrzad, in terms of the Iranian people, what do you think their sense is for the negotiations going forward? For instance, President Trump has said it'll be up to the Iranian people, but we'll be there to help, as in the United States. What help do you think the Iranians are expecting from the U.S. going forward here?
Well, for sure, at this moment, we know that there wouldn't be any boots on the ground. This is something that President Trump has said, but still they need support to help the Prince Reza Pahlavi to do the transition and help them to form a temporary government so that the transition can be done. There's always the fear that the future of Iran, what if the future becomes like very much what happened in Libya, in Iraq, but it can be different. First, historically, Iranian region has been always together. Over thousands of years, a lot of things happen, a lot of war happened, but the country remained together. So it is not like a tribal, like it's not very much like Afghanistan that you have these tribes that they don't get along to with each other. Although there are a lot of ethnics inside Iran, but these ethnics have proved that they are a part of the country called Iran for many, many years. At the same time, we know that there's a very clearly defined, it's a time limited legal framework from the team of Reza Pahlavi, which the team are presenting something called emergency booklet. And this is for transitional period in both Libya and Iraq. The main problem was the absence of a structured, like something enforceable legal order during the transition. And then the emergency powers were either not defined, it was unchecked, which eventually led to power vacuums. Which this problem doesn't exist at this moment for the plan that Prince Reza Pahlavi has. And by contrast, what is called the emergency period in the emergency booklet of Prince Reza Pahlavi is explicitly very much limited to 100 to 180 days, which is a clearly defined executive authorities. Like it is very transparent. It's showing that what people can expect for the future. It's showing the requirements, how the mechanisms for accountability are going to work, and this booklet shows that how we can skip the parts that Iran gets, like Libya or Iraq in the future.
And Andrew, in terms of here at home, we've heard several congressmen, especially on the Democratic Party, saying, I want to hear the case from the president on why we're going to war here. Of course, we know from this morning that 3 American service members were killed, 5 wounded at one of the U.S. sites somewhere in the Middle East. Do you think the president has made that case strong enough, especially in the video just released about an hour ago?
I think he has, and I think there are multiple points to this. We do know that Iran is continuing to acquire, or it's desiring to acquire, a nuclear weapon. That is first and foremost unacceptable to the United States. Both Republicans and Democrats fully acknowledge and are aware that Iran seeks to acquire this. We know Operation Midnight Hammer caused substantial damage, but as the president and his team has made clear, they've received intelligence indications that Iran is continuing to protect uranium, to enrich it as highly as possible, or at least develop those capabilities to when it so chooses to have that option, it wants to achieve it in as quickly of a time as possible. So having a nuclear armed Iran, that is the largest state sponsor of terror, as the president has said. We know that Iran supports terrorist proxies throughout the Middle East that have killed or attempted to kill many U.S. service members throughout the Middle East. This is a regime that can use a nuclear weapon to take out or attempt to hurt the United States, to hurt Israel, and use these types of weapons in any manner that it may deem necessary. That's unacceptable. The president also made clear that Iran is pursuing ballistic missiles that can hurt the United States at home, in addition to those that it has hurt and unfortunately, and God bless them, killed the 3 service members killed in action with the different tools that they have at their disposal. So it's very clear that Iran is wanting to hurt the United States. They've proved this. They've backed Hamas, supported Hamas, especially during and after the October 7th attack on Israel. And this regime is willing to do that continuously. So President Trump, after giving them option of diplomacy to solve these issues, they outright refused, ensuring that the president, in order to pursue peace, is utilizing strength. And that's what it looks like to put America first and keep the American people safe.
And Andrew, very quickly on that, we do know, of course, that Iran is retaliating across the region. In terms of here at home, though, how concerned should we be about cells activating or terror attacks here on the home front?
I think we should be concerned. We did see last night an attack in Austin, which seems to have been, we're of course waiting for additional details, but some initial reporting indicates that this was inspired by Iran, or a radical that was willing to conduct this attack by themselves. That's unacceptable. It ensures that the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, and those all around and keeping Americans safe, our local police, our law enforcement across the country have a very important job here. But it also shows, again, just how Iran is not just a Middle East threat, it's a threat here in the United States. That's why the president is taking these types of actions. The Iranian regime has made very clear that they're not going to negotiate in good faith with the United States. to the point of encouraging terrorist attacks and potentially, at the minimum, being linked and wanting to jihad or different types of attacks across the world, let alone the Middle East, to hurt the United States, to hurt freedom-loving people around the world. That's an unacceptable proposition from the regime, and the president is taking necessary action at home and abroad.
And Shahrzad, given all the risks there, especially across the region, in terms of a new Iran, what is the momentum among the Iranian people in opposing their current regime?
They are trying to follow the messages from President Trump and also from Prince Reza Pahlavi, because this is a very I would say the moment that the war is happening right now inside Iran. So they can see missiles in the sky. The internet is shut down. There's a blackout. There's no connection to the inside of the country, and in some cases it would be difficult to do the communication between Iranian people inside Iran. Although it's working, but even that might be difficult to happen. So it's very uncertain situation right now. At this moment, Iranian people do know what they want. They are asking loudly. They've been saying it for so many years that they want regime change. And they know how it's going to happen. They called Prince Reza Pahlavi's name for so many times during the demonstrations, during the protests, that 40,000 people were killed during these protests. So they know what they want. They want a future, secular democratic future for Iran, and they are saying that we now, at least the news that we are receiving, because there is internet shutdown, and they are saying that what we are happy of what happened yesterday about Ali Khamenei's death, and they are saying that we're happy that the U.S. and Israel, they are eliminating the Islamic Republic officials, but they are saying that they're waiting for the next steps and the guidance from what they should do, because at this very moment they're being told to stay at their homes. Although last night they came out to celebrate for Ali Khamenei's death, and there were a few videos that we were able to receive and was posted on social media, maybe through Starlink connections. So at this moment they know what they want. They want to go through this transition, and it's very clear for almost all Iranian, I would say 90%, 90 to 95%.
A historic moment for sure. Shahrzad Ghani, Andrew Harding, thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And there is a live look into Jerusalem, where earlier we did see one of Iran's missiles break through the Iron Dome there and hit. So we'll keep you updated as more information comes out. Stay tuned.
When I arrived in the U.S. at 19, I struggled to find job opportunities without a high school diploma. Everything I have, my education, my career, my marriage, I owe to the Adult Literacy Center and my teachers.
Your achievement has set an example for so many students. Most importantly, your daughter.
Education was the key that unlocked all my opportunities.
When you graduate, they graduate. Visit finishyourdiploma.org to find free adult education centers near you.
Getting prescription glasses from Select Specs is easier than you might think. Select your frames from our £6 range in-house brands or our extensive designer collections. Then enter, upload or email your latest prescription and our website will analyse it and help you select the best lenses and options to suit you. Click to place the order and your new Select Specs glasses are delivered right to your door. Ordering your prescription glasses is as easy as 1, 2, C with Select Specs and selectspecs.com.
Hi, I'm Jane Seymour, and I spent years on TV playing a doctor. But I learned about the heartbreaking reality of heart disease and stroke when they touched my own life. My father nearly died before having a quadruple bypass and valve replacement that saved him. And my mom, who was my inspiration, suffered a stroke that took away her speech, her ability to move, and ultimately her life. To see someone so vibrant, so positive, who'd survived so much in life, be debilitated by a stroke, it was devastating and also a wake-up call. And that's why I'm so passionate about supporting the American Heart Association. They're doing more every day to stop needless deaths. But they simply can't do their life-saving work without you. So please call now or go to helpheart.org. And for only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, your donation will go to work to do amazing things, like fund the next medical breakthrough, get the next person trained in CPR, and the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. I hope that you'll open your heart right now and join me. Please call now or go to helpheart.org. Give $19 a month and we'll send you this special t-shirt that you can proudly wear to show that you're part of a community of monthly donors who are helping save lives. A healthy heart, it's the spirit of life. It makes it possible to do the things that you love, to spend time with your friends and family and fulfill your life's dreams. But so many won't have that chance. Heart disease is America's #1 killer and the #1 killer of women. And that's why I'll do whatever I can to make sure others don't die from heart disease before their time. So please join me. Call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org. Donate this Heart Month and your first month's gift will be matched.
Welcome back. A historic first on some of the combat vehicles used in Operation Epic Fury. The United States Central Command announcing the first use in U.S. military history of one-way attack drones. We now go live to NTD's Washington correspondent Mario Tsu at the White House. Mari, good evening.
Hey, Tiff, good to see you again. Yeah, and that's right. And President Trump himself does not stop touting what he calls the singular strength of the American military. And today, in his second address to the nation after the beginning of Operation Epic Fury, President Trump is urging the Iranian military police to lay down their arms or face certain death. Take a look.
We have hit hundreds of targets in Iran, including Revolutionary Guard facilities, Iranian air defense systems. Just now it was announced that we knocked out 9 ships plus their naval building, all in a matter of literally minutes. Iran's formerly supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is dead. The United States has the strongest military the world has ever seen. I rebuilt our military in my first term. There's never been a military like we possess. And frankly, there's nobody even close, but we are now using that military for good.
In his address, President Trump says that there are likely to be more U.S. casualties, but that the U.S. military will avenge those American lives. As you can see behind me here, beneath the American flag at the White House, there's the POW MIA flag with the words, "You are not forgotten," beneath it. That says 3 service members were killed and 5 seriously wounded in this operation abroad. President Trump also says that combat operations will continue until the U.S.'s objectives are achieved. A Central Command today was reporting that 4 B-2 bombers made a round trip home safely. They went from Missouri to Iran and are now back in Missouri. And they dropped dozens of 2,000-pound bombs successfully on Iran's underground ballistic missile sites. Central Command is also announcing a historic first in military history. Take a look.
This regime will soon learn that no one should challenge the strength and might of the United States Armed Forces. And there is no military on earth even close to its power, strength, or sophistication.
Secretary of War Pete Hegseth is touting Operation Epic Fury as the most lethal, most complex, and most precision aerial operation in history. He says, quote, "The Iranian regime had their chance, yet refused to make a deal, and now they are suffering the consequences. For almost 50 years, Iran has targeted and killed Americans, always seeking the world's most powerful weapons to further their radical cause. Last night, unlike any previous president, President Trump began dealing with this cancer. We will not tolerate powerful missiles targeting the American people. Those missiles will be destroyed, along with Iran's Iran's missile production. The Iranian Navy will be destroyed, and as President Trump has said his entire life, Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. The United States did not start this conflict, but we will finish it. If you kill or threaten Americans anywhere in the world, as Iran has, then we will hunt you down and we will kill you. Our warriors are the best in the world, and they are fully unleashed to achieve our objectives. May God's providence protect them in this vital mission. And Admiral Brad Cooper, CENTCOM commander, says, quote, "The president ordered bold action, and our brave soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Guardians, and Coast Guardsmen are answering the call." Central Command is also announcing a historic first. That its task force Scorpion Strike, for the first time in history, is using one-way attack drones in combat during this operation. CENTCOM says, quote, "These low-cost drones, modeled after Iran's Shahed drones, are now delivering American-made retribution." Before this, the Pentagon mostly relied on high-end missiles such as Tomahawks for big strikes. Those are reusable, expensive, and piloted remotely. These new ones, though, called Lucas, Low-Cost Unmanned Combat Attack System, are disposable. They fly one way, slam into the target, and explode like flying bombs or kamikaze drones. In short, the U.S. is taking a page from Iran's playbook, taking cheap technology that Iran has exported to cause chaos and using it against the regime.
Meanwhile, TIF Central Command is also countering what they call false narratives being put out by the Iranian regime. The IRGC is claiming that a U.S. Navy ship was struck by missiles. U.S. Central Command says that no Navy ship has been struck. The Armada is fully operational. The Iranian regime is also claiming severe damage at several of U.S.'s bases abroad. CENTCOM says damage to U.S. bases has been minimal and have not impacted operations there. And Iran's also claiming to have struck the USS Abraham Lincoln with ballistic missiles. U.S. Central Command says that the Lincoln was not hit and that the missiles did not come close. Back to you.
All right, Mari, thank you for that. And to unpack all of this dynamic in the Middle East, we have an excellent panel joining us now. David Wormser, Middle East Affairs Analyst at the Center for Security Policy. He's also a former senior advisor to Vice President Dick Cheney on the Middle East. Adam Hardage is a combat veteran and former CIA operations officer. And Jonathan Houlihan is an attorney specializing in national security law and a veteran of both the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. I want to kick off this panel with a soundbite from the president first. Let's listen to that now.
There's never been a military like we possess. And frankly, there's nobody even close, but we are now using that military for good. We want to have it for good purpose. We're undertaking this massive operation not merely to ensure security for our own time and place, but for our children and their children, just as our ancestors have done for us many, many years ago. This is the duty and the burden of a free people. These actions are right and they are necessary to ensure that Americans will never have to face a radical, bloodthirsty terrorist regime armed with nuclear weapons and lots of threats.
And Jonathan, I want to start with you. So far, we have lost 3 U.S. service members in action. President Trump saying he expects there could be more casualties, but believes that in the end, this is going to be a great deal for the world. Do you think this operation will save more lives down the line?
I mean, absolutely. If you just look at the history of Iran and their proxies, the Shia militia groups, Lebanese Hezbollah, the Houthis, all of these kind of proxy groups have killed thousands of Americans, not only in the Iraq war, but around the world through acts of terrorism. I mean, Iran is the #1 exporter of terrorist activity. So, of course, especially a nuclear-armed Iran, I mean, the threat, it's a worldwide threat at that point. So taking action now, of course, saves American lives. Under Article 2 of the Constitution, as Commander-in-Chief, that's the president's duty. He takes it serious, and that's what he's done here.
And David, your thoughts on that, not just for Americans, but also for the region?
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Iran has killed so many people, starting first of all with Iranians. We're talking tens of thousands in one night, or one, 2, 3 night period. But they've killed a lot of people in Israel. They've killed a lot of Lebanese. They've killed in Syria, mass slaughter in Syria to try to keep the regime there. This is in Argentina, across the world. This is a darkness that has descended on the world since 1979. They were one of the critical elements of the axis of evil that has been threatening the United States for the last 50 years, joining the Soviet Union when it was still around. Until it's gone, all Americans are under threat. Even in the United States, they're trying to kill Americans.
And Adam, your thoughts on that, how this could save lives down the road, but also the message of deterrence, if you will, that this sends to our adversaries?
Sure. And first off, I would like to echo what your other guest, and that is, I completely agree with them. We have seen nothing but endless calls for violence, and not only that, but actual violence on the behalf of Iran, state-sponsored terrorism worldwide. So when I served in Iraq, Afghanistan, West Africa, Jordan, we were targeted directly by Islamic forces, by Iranian forces, in Afghanistan, in Iraq. And in fact, the explosive force projectiles that killed so many of our service members and wounded so many all came from Iran. And we all knew that they were, but we had no political will as a country back then to address that or even explain that was what was really happening. So this has been, an ongoing thing for almost 50 years, where Iran has poked us in the eye over and over and over and over and over again, and meanwhile also suppressed their own freedom of movement with their own people. They've suppressed everything from a very fundamentalist religious standpoint, and I'm just really happy to see that the Iranian people have a shot at freedom finally, after almost 50 years stranglehold on them.
And David, in terms of Iran's response so far, how surprising is it that Iran is striking targets across the Middle East, including nations like Qatar, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia? How will this war change the dynamic in the Middle East?
I think the only one that surprises me a little bit is Oman, because the Omanis were really the advocate on one level for the Iranians. Qatar, I also have been, semi-aligned with Iran, and one would ordinarily be surprised by that. But Al Udeid American Air Base, CENTCOM's air base, is there, so it's not surprising that they would try to hit that. Iran said they'd do this, and they'll do this. What I think is surprising is what may be developing now, is we're getting first reports of a potential strike on Cyprus against Akrotiri. This would be a NATO Europe. This is hitting Europe, so that could be something quite interesting and different. That would surprise me slightly. Not much the Iranian regime does, though, surprises me.
And Jonathan, talk to us about the reach of Iran's proxy networks. We've seen, those in action, the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, of course. Now, many reports saying perhaps they're downgraded in military might after recent operations. How much of a threat are they currently? Are they getting direct orders from Tehran? How should we read this?
Well, you have really the conventional forces, which were striking, but you have the Quds Force, that's kind of the intelligence operations, special forces groups, and they have networks and proxies worldwide. So they truly do have a worldwide network all the way, in Venezuela, in the United States. The open source, the government has said there's networks and proxies that have been identified in the United States connected to the IRGC. So it is a worldwide threat. And I think all Americans and the United States government, they need to be vigilant and just continue to pay attention to this. So once those conventional threats are lessened and the capabilities are gone, there's still a asymmetrical warfare, kind of network warfare that we have to be concerned with through those Shia militia groups, through those terrorist networks. So it's not just the Iranian uniformed military, but all those networks and terrorist groups that they're affiliated with.
And Adam, I want to talk about the U.S. as a strong fighting force, because not long ago, we all saw the Afghanistan withdrawal. The U.S. was not seen as strong on the world stage. Now, recently, there's been a lot of very successful operations. You had Venezuela, you had the bunker busters hitting Iran's nuclear facilities, Operation Midnight Hammer there. Is it really that fast to turn around a fighting force?
Where there's a will, there's a way, apparently. I think what we've seen is decisive leadership by a president who holds, no holds barred, so to speak. He's willing to do what he says he's going to do, whereas most, I think, administrations that we've seen previously in the last 20 plus years have, made threats and then maybe not followed them up or not had the right follow through. having served in that world in a multitude of wars over the last 20 years, I am just personally relieved to see one leader who is willing to put his money where his mouth is, frankly. And, we understand that this is a dangerous time for everybody. It's a dangerous time for the world. There's a whole lot of reasons why you could say, oh, this happened, it's a distraction, ongoing news events. There's a whole lot of cynical ways you could look at it. But I would also say that what you are really watching is real politic happening in real time. So, by taking out China's two most major supplies of energy, it has put the U.S. in a strategically dominant position against them. And when I refer to that, I'm talking about Iran and Venezuela. And so I think it's important for Americans and the world to kind of take a beat and look at the broader picture and say, what is the strategic reason for this? And I would say that what you are witnessing is decisive action in action.
And David, what are you watching for across the Middle East as, Iran escalates the tensions here? How successful can the U.S. and Israel do this without boots on the ground?
Well, of course, this now turns to the Iranian people, who are, in essence, our boots on the ground, the people themselves. So I think what to look for now is the striking of core regime targets that aren't just the missiles or functioning of the military, but specific things like police stations, IRGC bases, places where the instruments of repression gather and issue from to suppress the Iranian people. And that will be the signal eventually that will be given to the Iranian people that right now the signal is to stay home, let the United States and Israel do their job and get it done. But then in a few days or a week or two, take to the streets once the job is done, probably with some help from the CIA and Mossad and so forth. But the bottom line is, I would look now to see the shifting of the military activity to include these granular strikes on these structures of repression in Iran. And the signs are that in the last few hours, the Israelis have already started pivoting that, even though there still is a great deal of a missile threat that has to be cleaned out, obviously.
And Jonathan, as a veteran yourself, how are you viewing this operation? How is it different from, say, previous conflicts we've been involved in, such as Iraq and Afghanistan specifically?
Well, like I said, IRGC, Iranian proxies have always been in the background, whether the IEDs and some of the munitions that were found in their proxy forces, that they were operating freely and killing U.S. soldiers. So I think this is appropriate, especially for some of the actions they've taken place in those combat theaters. But to the point of rebuilding the nation, I think that these strikes and this dismantling of these asymmetrical kind of units and IRGC and cutting off the heads of all the radicals in the government, it gives the administration a good opportunity to kind of negotiate, get back to the table, and not completely get to a point where we're nation building. I think we can. It gives us a good diplomatic position where they can go in and potentially dust off some of those JICPOA things that failed in the past and make sure uranium's not being enriched and really build the nation from where it is now instead of complete nation rebuilding. And that's the difference in Iraq and Afghanistan. We don't want to be in the nation building business with boots on the ground. We just want a regime that we can deal with that doesn't export terrorism all over the world.
Adam, we spoke earlier about propaganda and, misinformation, disinformation, especially in the fog of war. Recently we saw with the Houthis, especially a lot of drones. Obviously, the Ukraine-Russia war, also a lot of drone warfare there. How has the nature of warfare evolved?
Yeah, frankly, I got to tell you, as a guy who's been boots on the ground and who's, gone guns up against the enemy, I don't like where warfare is personally. I don't like robotics. I don't like drones. I don't like mass drone swarms, especially. I don't like all of the stuff that is happening because you no longer have standing armies going against each other, which, you know, as hard as that all was, there was a little bit of valor and honor within that system. And now you've got a system where basically you can have a 15-year-old kid 10,000 miles away piloting something that is through a set of goggles, and it's not even real to them. And meanwhile, they're taking human lives. So the nature of warfare has changed dramatically. It's going to continue to change. The rollout of AI is absolutely going to continue to change things. In fact, that's why I wrote about it, to help prepare the next generation for an AI future, because I see that everything that we knew and grew up with, you know, in our generations has changed. And so I don't, you know, I don't think that people are comprehending or even really tackling the fullness of the problems that are ahead of us. So I think AI is going to replace, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole. This AI is a different conversation, but I would say that what we're looking at in warfare, this is just the beginning of the future, and it's going to get more and more distant and more kinetic and more dangerous. And I would even say that's going to get dangerous for your average residential person who is for their neighbor, who is a real jerk, kind of thing. I think that's in 10 years going to be a real problem. So these are very serious issues that we have to address as not just as a nation, but as a global community. There's got to be some honor put back into humanity, I think.
A lot of changes for sure. David, you posted recently, quote, "We need to step back for a moment and appreciate the sea change we are witnessing. The most moderate Arabs were willing to commit suicide rather than associate with Israel." Expand on that for us.
Yeah, back in 1991, I was comparing the 1991 war to now. In 1991, Iraq had invaded Kuwait and was threatening Saudi Arabia, and the United States had to liberate Kuwait and defend Saudi Arabia from what could have been annihilation by the Iraqis. And in that war, the Saudis basically told the United States, Israel cannot be part of this. It needs to be as distant as possible, not involved, even at the expense of taking on missiles, or else Saudi Arabia will not help, will not be part of it. So they were literally willing to commit suicide against Saddam rather than involve themselves in a war with Israel. Now, you zap forward 30 years, and all of a sudden, there are the Saudis, the UAE, Bahrain, and some others clamoring to join a war that is led by Israel and the United States. And that's such a sea change in what we're seeing. I mean, sometimes you have to just step back and appreciate how much the region has changed because of that.
And Adam, looking ahead, how do you see that type of change rippling across the region? What does that mean for us here at home?
For us here at home, that's going to be one that I think, I mean, you've got now just destabilization of the southern border with Mexico. You've got the Venezuela issue that's popping off. You've got now instability back in the Middle East. You've got a war between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Frankly, I'm kind of the spiritual nature. I'm not gonna lie about that. And I'm gonna say I would not be surprised if these are signs of the times type thing. I think that there's, separation of the weak going on right now. Leopards always show their spots, and people have to take sides at some point. So, as far as any advice that I might have or give to anybody, I would just say it's time for parents to educate their kids as best they can. It's time for communities to band together. It's time for people to get right with the Lord Almighty. I'm not trying to be, Chicken Little, the sky is falling kind of thing. It's not. I'm just saying these are the signs of it's time to be prudent, because the world is becoming very unstable. And what you have seen is the democratization both of intelligence through AI, and then the democratization of lethality through piloted drones and everything else. So now you can have it doesn't even take a nation state to take out a major U.S. Piece of equipment like an aircraft or a ship. So with that in mind, I think the nature of warfare, the nature of everything, the nature of jobs, the nature of our future has changed in huge ways that most people probably aren't even really thinking about. They really should. So I would love to pontificate on where we're going to go with Iran and the Middle East right now, but I would say for your audience and everybody else, it's best to really focus on the here and now and the micro, the tactical things that they can control.
And Jonathan, really quickly, I want to go back to your earlier point about not getting bogged down in nation-state building. What does victory look like here in terms of both denuclearization and breaking Tehran's proxy reach?
I mean, I think victory looks like what we're already doing. I mean, it's completely dismantling their Navy, dismantling the IRGC, dismantling their leadership, and bringing people to the table that can actually have a diplomatic solution. I mean, at the end of the day, there has to be a diplomatic solution to this at the end of the warfare. And that means making sure they're not enriching uranium. They're making sure that the nuclear program is for peaceful civilian means. It's not for weapon building. That's what victory looks like. And I think President Trump, I mean, just take a step back, the historic nature. I mean, in Venezuela and Iran, I mean, these have been problem sets that the United States have been dealing with for so long. And in just his first a little over a year of his administration, I mean, he's taken the problem and he solved it through warfare. But I think the diplomatic fix is going to be there. If you look at Marco Rubio and then all of these other nations in the Middle East, to the point of they're contributing, they're participating in diplomatic efforts. I think it's going to be a Middle East whole of Middle East effort, an international effort, and United States whole of United States government effort to ensure that we don't get back into the nation building business and we have a peaceful, stable Middle East region.
A sea change for sure. Jonathan Houlihan, David Wormser, and Adam Hardage, thank you all so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you're looking at a live feed of Air Force One. President Trump has just landed in Joint Base Andrews, coming back from Florida. We'll see if he speaks to reporters and bring that to you if he does. Stay with us.
Is deep-sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritan Green Vegetable Omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritan Green Vegetable Omega-3. Eat 2 a day and you'll feel brand new.
Mathis Home is your destination for the biggest selection of living room furniture. And for power reclining sofas, nobody has a better selection. Here's a top seller, covered in a rich saddle brown leather. And the power mechanism reclines all the way to the 0G position. A sharply tailored leather sofa like this one should cost way more. But at Mathis Home, it's just $19.98. One of hundreds ready to test drive. Hurry into the Presidential Savings Event going on now at Mathis Home.
I go by Jackie. I'm 44 years old. I had 3 kids at the time and single mother. I was working 60 hours a week. Still couldn't pay the bills. Skip meals so that they could eat. It's been hard because one thing falls into place, 10 things fall out of place. You know, I just can't do this alone and make it work.
1 in 5 children face hunger in America, and food costs are rising. But everyone needs nourishing food to thrive. And they can when we work together so our neighbors can feed their families. Call or go online right now to join Feeding America with your gift of just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day. Together, thanks to a nationwide network of food banks, dedicated volunteers, and the monthly support of people like you, we can fill plates with nutritious food for families across America.
One day my mother came over to my house and said, "There's a meeting at the pantry." I said, "Okay," and I went. There were some ladies in there. They were from the food bank. They asked several questions. Some of those were about me and my story, but it helped me to open up a little bit.
We're getting closer to the day when no one in America faces hunger, but we can't do it without you. Call or go online now. Visit helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, just 63 cents a day. 98% of donations go directly to help millions of people facing hunger, from coast to coast and in your own community. And when you give by credit card, we'll send you this exclusive canvas grocery bag to show you are a part of a movement of supporters working together to help end hunger.
I have people that I can trust. I have hope.
Please call now or make your monthly donation at helpfeedingamerica.org, and your gift can double in impact.
And welcome back. This just in. Israel's emergency response service says it is treating at least 6 people. They were wounded in the aftermath of an Iranian missile, one of several aimed at Jerusalem Sunday night. Residents in one neighborhood said the booms were the loudest they had heard since the war began. Images from the scene reveal a large crater in a road in one neighborhood. It marks the first missile impact in Jerusalem since Iran began launching retaliatory strikes, though it's unclear whether the other booms were the sounds of missiles landing or being intercepted. First responders are currently searching for other casualties and following up on other reports of potential missile impact sites. Meanwhile, people in Iran and across the globe are celebrating the death of former Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. They're taking to the streets, singing, chanting, and in some cases, toppling monuments. Here are the highlights.
Eyewitness video shows crowds in the Iranian town of Galadar toppling a monument dedicated to the Islamic Republic's founder, Ayatollah Khamenei. Flames are seen rising from the roundabout, with onlookers cheering as the monument falls. Khomeini overthrew the last Shah of Iran in the 70s, making Iran an Islamic republic. Before that, the country was open and friendly to the West. The United States, the UK, and many other countries were doing business with Iran. This stopped after the country became an Islamic republic, led by Shia clerics. In the Iranian city of Karaj, near the capital city of Tehran, residents are now taking to the streets in celebration after the death of the so-called supreme leader Khamenei. They're seen playing cheerful music, shouting, and celebrating. And residents of Iza in Iran's Khuzestan province are celebrating as well. They're waving pre-revolutionary Iranian flags and setting off fireworks. The pre-revolutionary flag, used before the Islamic Revolution, has become a symbol of opposition to the current regime.
And to help us understand how the military operation on Iran will impact the economy in the U.S., China, and beyond, we have our wonderful panel with us. Rod D. Martin is the founder and CEO of Martin Capital and chairman of the board at Institute for the American Future. Rob Maness is a retired U.S. Air Force colonel and former wing and squadron commander. Thank you both so much for joining us. Now, starting with you, Rod, the Chinese Communist Party has voiced support for the Iranian regime, but has not come to their rescue in any meaningful way despite their close partnership. Are you surprised by how the Chinese Communist Party is reacting to the situation in Iran?
Absolutely not. I'm no less unsurprised now than I was in the 12-day war, when they talked a good game and did absolutely nothing. The Chinese ability to project power into the region is quite limited at best. But the bigger point is that China is a predatory ally. It has done everything in its power to take advantage of Russia's situation. And in the Iranian case, it has refused to even sell them any advanced fighter jets. There's a reason that we have been talking about Iranian F-14s sold to them in the 1970s by the United States under the Shah, because they don't have any modern equipment. The Iranians have, at best...
Rod, hold that thought very quickly, because President Trump has just landed in D.C., so we're going to go to that live feed very quickly. There you see the president. He has just landed in D.C. coming from Florida, where he was monitoring the early strikes in the situation yesterday. He did give two video messages to American peoples and the people of Iran. There he is walking on the runway there. We'll bring you if he takes any questions from the press, but there you see him. He is in D.C. now as we expect more in the ongoing and unfolding situation in Iran and across the region. And if you guys were there, what would you ask the president? Rod, I'll bring you back on now.
Well, I would, first of all, I would express gratitude. This is a shockingly evil regime. This is a regime that literally executes women for getting raped. They are the source of every armed conflict I can think of across the region. It is hard to think of a conflict that would continue without their direction, armament, and funding. And the president is taking the opportunity here to actually give the Iranian people a chance to topple this evil regime, to replace it with a constitutional democracy, and to become a partner for peace with the United States, Israel, and all the other countries in the region. It's really an extraordinary moment, and we just pray that the Iranian people can seize it.
And Colonel, I want to get to more on China, but first, this has so far been a largely Air Force run operation or in the skies. As a retired Air Force colonel yourself, speak to the complexity of this mission, especially you had U.S. and Israeli forces working together here.
Well, yeah, thanks for having me on, Tiffany. Look, this is a combined air and naval campaign and combined with the Israeli forces too, and other surface forces that may be in the area that are our allies. So the first day really was all dedicated primarily to taking down the integrated air defense system, the command and control nodes, and going after what the president called the head of the snake, the Ayatollah and his team, all very successful. As a matter of fact, the Israelis announced today that they've so successfully taken the air defense system down now that they're no longer using standoff weapons, which means they're flying directly over the targets that they want to destroy and dropping bombs on them. So very, very successful. But as we go into the ensuing days, it'll probably take somewhere between 2 weeks and a month to hit all of the strategic and tactical targets that the president and the prime minister want to destroy, to take away the Iranians' ability to use things like intermediate and longer range ballistic missiles to reach out and strike countries like what they're doing today and yesterday by striking countries that aren't even involved in the operation just because they happen to be there, and the Iranians are trying to pull them into the fight and try to create a rift between the United States or Israel or both and like the Arab Gulf states. So the Iranians are going to continue to try to do that until we take those away from them. And we've begun that process. We'll continue to hit their air defense systems and their command and control networks to the point where even one of the generals from Iran was saying today that, I think it was the foreign minister actually, said today that their command and control is so disrupted, their units are operating independently, and blame these strikes on civilian targets on the military units that don't have any command and control capability anymore. So that we've fractured them. We're disrupting them. And it's a good time for the Iranian people to rise up, as the president has asked them to do, and take weapons from these armories that are now isolated and attack these targets and these units that are isolated from their primary command and control out of Tehran.
And just there on screen, you saw the president go from Air Force One to Marine One. He did not stop to take questions. Rod, in terms of the economic impacts here, of course, there's been a lot of focus on the Strait of Hormuz. China is the world's biggest buyer of Iranian crude oil, and a large portion of that oil transits through that Strait of Hormuz. If there is a supply chain disruption, how big of a shockwave will it send to China's economy?
Iran's ability to close the strait is very limited, and the U.S. Navy is more than competent to eliminate what remains of the Iranian Navy. So, you know, the biggest problem we have right now is making sure that the ballistic missiles are reduced to nothingness, and that their ability to continue attacking ships in the strait and our bases around the region are eliminated. On the broader economic implications, I can't stress enough that 90% of Iran's exported oil goes to China. 40% of Russia's exported oil goes to China. So as Donald Trump tightens the noose on the shadow fleet that has enabled all of that, the bigger target is actually communist China, which is increasingly in a box, is going to have to start buying its oil, the huge percentage of its oil on the open market at full price. And increasingly, it's running out of allies. Venezuela, now Iran. If Russia can be peeled away as the result of a peace deal with Ukraine, it's transformative for the Chinese position, and it's a great boon to China's neighbors, particularly Taiwan.
And very quickly on screen there, we just saw a Marine One flying off. Colonel, I want to continue that conversation, though, because we do know already that China's economy is on a pretty shaky footing already. So if they do now have to pay actual market prices for the oil, how big of a deal is that? And then also on top of that, given the efficiency of the U.S. military operations we're seeing both in Iran and, of course, Venezuela back in January, not that long ago, right? Is the Chinese Communist Party going to think twice before making any moves on Taiwan?
Well, first of all, right, they're going to have to pay market price, but they're also going to have to deal with the United States. That's what's brilliant about this combined Venezuela and now Iran operation, is that it's cut China out of its shadow fleet, as Rod said, and this cheap oil coming from Iran and Russia. And that's what all of the Western Hemisphere approach has been about, going to Greenland and trying to get Greenland under the wing of the United States of America, is all about disrupting China's ability to move oil back and forth and move goods back and forth to its allies that are, like you said, being peeled off there. So it's a very tremendous outcome that's happened there. And the president's going to go see President Xi here soon. When he walks in that room, he will have all the chess pieces on the board. He'll be holding his cards that only he has, and Xi will not have very many at all, and be in a lower position and in a really weak position as they start their talks and everything. As far as Taiwan goes, look, you know, one of the things the Chinese did give to the Iranians and the Venezuelans is this so-called counter stealth radar for their air defense system. And in both cases, those radars have been destroyed easily by not only stealth aircraft, but we're using non-stealthy EF-18s for disrupting the integrated air defense system as part of these strike packages. And we've even been able to hit them with those. So the Chinese are not going to be very well thought of from their defense gear that they're trying to peddle around the world. And that's going to hurt their economy even more than it's already being hurt because of the oil situation.
And Rod, how are you viewing the upcoming Trump-Xi visit in April? Because many headlines, at least, were saying after the Supreme Court ruling on the tariffs that Trump had lost one of his cards when it came to China.
Well, first of all, he absolutely hasn't. You know, the Supreme Court ruling was shockingly narrow in that it only prohibited the use of IEEPA to impose tariffs. And you've got a 9-0 majority, if you read the dissent and the concurrences, for the idea that the president's power to impose tariffs under the other trade acts that explicitly delineate such power continues in full force. I mean, this was the Chief Justice's point. You know, why is he using IEEPA? He can use these other powers. Well, one of those has never been used, and it's the Section 338 power under the Tariff Act of 1930. No president's ever used it, but it allows the president to hit any country in the world with a 50% tariff for national security matters. There's just no way for the president to get overruled on this. And with the Supreme Court saying that this power is enough of a foreign policy power to be split between Congress and the president, it's very clear that he has at least as much power as he has to bomb Iran. I'll have an article out in the morning on the constitutionality of the president's actions here, which I think is ironclad going back to the founding fathers. But in all these areas, Xi Jinping is absolutely in the exact position that Rob just said. He has very few cards to play, and Donald Trump has him exactly where he wants him.
And expanding on that, Colonel, zooming back or zooming out a bit here, for the Venezuela operation, there's reporting that the radar or defense systems were actually Chinese-made, and it seems like those failed. There was also a Chinese delegation on the ground when that operation went down. In terms of Iran, after the 12-day war last year, there's reports that Iran changed from the U.S. GPS system to China's Beidou system. It changed a bunch of the tech that was either Israeli or U.S.-made to Chinese-made ones. Given all of this, though, talk to us about the tactical significance of these operations and how fast they've been. Did you expect something like this?
Well, from an airman's perspective, taking down the integrated air defense system with modern precision weapons and the ability that we have to see, hear, and detect all of the frequencies, the radars, and how they operate. And you can even judge how proficient the operators that the Chinese have trained on their radars and those kind of things are after you observe them over a period of time, which is what we did with Venezuela. We were down there for weeks. That's why we were doing it. We were prepping the battle space. Same thing with Iran. When the Iranians got the Chinese radars, we started looking at them. We'd already seen what they could or couldn't do in the 12-day war by bringing our B-2s in and our F-22s to back up the Israeli Defense Forces, because, they're monitoring and picking up things like the electromagnetic spectrum themselves and recording that. And we bring all that intelligence back and we map out how effective or ineffective the operators are combined with the technology. And then in less than 24 hours, as you saw in this case, Iran's a much larger target set than the Venezuelan operation is. But even just 24 hours out, the Israelis are already reporting that the air defense system is so badly damaged that they're just flying in at will and dropping bombs right over the target. And that's what we're doing with our non-stealth fighter aircraft coming off of the aircraft carriers too, with minimal threat. And what threats still remain there, like infrared manual or man-launched pad missiles, man-pad missiles, and those and AAA are well below the fighting altitudes that we're using these aircraft at. So it's very quick these days because of the accuracy of the weapons and the intelligence that we are able to collect. And I'm not surprised at all. But the Iranians are in for a big surprise with this probably 30-day air campaign, because we're going to systematically, along with the Israeli Air Force, take apart their production capability for ballistic missiles, their supply capability for the ballistic missiles themselves, their launchers. You've seen a few videos of those already. Their drones. You saw a video yesterday of a drone actually sitting on the runway with its engine running, destroyed. So that is the type of capability we have. And we're even starting to strike those IRGC forces that are suppressing protests and that attacked the celebrating Iranians last night. Well, all of a sudden, those police and IRGC forces were hit from above with our aircraft, which tells you that we have complete control over the airspace and complete control and knowledge of their communications, because you have to know what they're talking about to know where they're going and when they're going to be there. And that's pretty incredible.
Definitely incredible footage and headlines coming off across the decapitation, if you will, of Iran's regime head, at least. Now, President Trump has said that, this will continue until all objectives will be met, adding there could be more casualties. We do know, as of this morning, 3 American service members have been killed, 5 wounded. Rod, what are your thoughts on that? Depending on how long this plays out, what is the cost of war here? President Trump did say in his earlier message today that it will save more lives down the road. How are you reading that?
Well, it's certainly tragic that we've lost 3 of our bravest and best. And my heart really goes out to their families. But I'm gratified that it's so few. We really have lost very, very few people in a very tremendous operation. This is across a tremendous target set across a very large country, and for us to have so few casualties at this point is really quite remarkable and a great testimony to the power of the United States military. Longer term, the biggest problem that I think shocked the conscience of the president back in January is the regime's willingness to murder its own people. Roughly 36,000 people have been murdered in the streets, unarmed protesters just seeking their freedom. And again, this is a regime that doesn't stop there. It's not just the people they kill in the streets. If you get knocked in the head and get sent to the hospital, the Revolutionary Guard will come in the hospital and shoot you in your bed. This is a regime that executes women for getting raped. This is a regime that has sparked wars in Yemen, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Gaza. Everywhere there's a problem around the region, and certainly problems in other parts of the world, this, the largest state sponsor of terrorism on planet Earth, is the focus of nearly every conflict that we can point at. And eliminating this regime will save countless lives across countless countries, not just this year, but for decades to come.
And Colonel, as we're nearing running out of time a bit here, what are your final thoughts and what are you watching in terms of where this is all going?
Well, as somebody who started his time at 17 years old in uniform when the Iranians declared war on the United States 47 years ago, I want to say thank you to the families and to the Americans that have given their lives for this operation, because this is going to remove the most destabilizing force that's inside a nation state, that controls a nation state over the last 50 years around the world. It destabilizes the Middle East. Hamas will evaporate. Hezbollah will evaporate over time. All of these proxies will evaporate, and all of these tensions that the Iranians have sought to keep going all these years, like the Palestinian effort and those kinds of things, will eventually evaporate, and we'll have peace and prosperity in that part of the world. And the rest of the world will also be more stable because they will not be in it.
And Rod, final thoughts?
I'm just so grateful that we have a president that actually understands we need the sharp, short use of American power to maximum extent. He talked about this in January when he asked the Pentagon for plans for decisive action. We're not going to spend 20 years on the ground here. We're not going to spend 2 decades nation building. We're going to empower the Iranian people to take back their country and their future. That's glorious. That's what I voted for. I think that's what a lot of other people did too.
Oh, Rod D. Martin and Colonel Rob Maness, thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for tuning in to our continued breaking news coverage on Iran. Stay with us for more updates and analysis in the next 2 hours with NTD's Steve Lance. I'm Tiffany Meyer, and good night.